The data said it was intentional. Jamie McMurray on the TNT broadcast called the evidence undeniable. Denny Hamlin went on his own podcast and used the word premeditated. Richard Childress called it blatant on team radio, and SVG apologized to the RCR crew after the race. And yet, on Tuesday, no penalty for SVG, for Hill, or for anyone. So, how does that happen? How does NASCAR look at all of that evidence, hear all of those opinions from some of the most credible people in the sport, and still come out the other side with nothing? The answer is actually really interesting, and it reveals something important about how NASCAR's penalty system actually works, and exactly what SVG did that kept him out of trouble. Why everyone expected a penalty. Let's start with what NASCAR actually did before making the call. This was not a quick decision. NASCAR Vice President of Racing Communications Mike Ford detailed the entire review process on the Holler Talk podcast this week, and the scope of what officials went through is genuinely extensive. They reviewed SMT data from every single lap that SVG and Hill were on track together, not just lap 48, but the entire race. They went through every radio transmission from both cars, looking for anything that suggested planning or intent. They looked at every available camera angle, and they specifically searched for anything earlier in the race that might have set off what happened at turn 3. We looked to see if there were any anomalies throughout the race, and something that spurred this, that maybe was payback from earlier. We went through all the radio transmissions to see if there was anything that rose to a smoking gun, camera angles, and all available resources, as we always say. And nothing in our eyes proved definitively this was 100% intentional and penalty-worthy. Every lap, every radio call, every camera, and still no smoking gun. NASCAR's full investigation explained. Here is the specific thing that saved SVG from a penalty. And once you understand it, the whole situation makes a lot more sense. In recent cases where NASCAR has penalized drivers for retaliatory actions, Ryan Preece at Texas and Denny Hamlin in a separate incident, the key piece of evidence was not the crash itself, it was the radio. Both Preece and Hamlin said something on their radios that indicated intent before the contact happened. Preece ranted about Ty Gibbs and then drove into him. Hamlin was heard expressing frustration and then made the contact. In both cases, the words came before the crash and made the crash impossible to explain as a racing incident. SVG said absolutely nothing on the radio about Hill at Chicago. Not a word. His radio traffic before, during, and after the contact was all about car setup. No anger, no threat, no "I'm going to get him." Just handling chatter, as if the entire situation was not happening around him. Ford made the standard crystal clear. There's enough reasonable doubt to where it didn't rise to a penalty for us here. If you remove that reasonable doubt, then you're going to get a penalty. If you say you're going to do it and then do it, that is going to rise to the level of a penalty. The one thing that saved SVG, that distinction, frustrated a lot of people inside the garage this week, including Denny Hamlin, who did not hold back on his Actions Detrimental podcast. Hamlin drew a direct comparison between the SVG Hill crash and the Ryan Preece-Ty Gibbs incident at Texas earlier this season, where Preece was penalized. His conclusion was that both looked the same, but SVG's might have actually looked worse. SVG's looked far more aggressive. When they thought Ryan Preece committed murder to Ty Gibbs, what's above murder? Premeditated. That's a harder sentence. They're one and the same, but SVG's look bad. The data would argue SVG went into the corner with no intent to slow up. It's not like there was a hole there. All we know is that data typically doesn't lie. Jamie McMurray on the TNT broadcast went even further, calling the SMT data undeniable evidence of intent. And yet NASCAR's answer remained the same. The data tells you what the car did. It does not tell you why. And without SVG saying something, anything that connected his radio to his actions, there was no case to answer. Dale Earnhardt Jr., on the other side of this, took a more pragmatic view of Hill's retaliation under caution. On the Dale Jr. download, he called it short track racing and said, "We all have wanted to do it. We've all maybe done it at some point in our careers." Austin Hill knows his race is over. He knows it. When your race is over, you're like, I want his race to be over. NASCAR took the same view. Neither move rose to a penalty, so neither driver was punished. Denny Hamlin and Jamie McMurray disagree. So, why is NASCAR meeting with both drivers at Atlanta on Saturday if no one did anything wrong? Because the absence of a penalty is not the end of this story. It is the beginning of the next chapter. 3 incidents in 3 consecutive races. Pocono, San Diego, and Chicago. The data at Chicago suggested something deliberate enough that McMurray called it undeniable on national television. Hill door-slammed SVG under caution and told his team, just wait right after the crash. Richard Childress was on the radio calling it blatant. And now both of them are heading to Atlanta, a track that SVG himself described as a superspeedway on steroids, where contact at 200 miles per hour has completely different consequences than a corner at Chicago. NASCAR understands exactly what could happen if this is left to resolve itself on track. Ford said it plainly. We want to have a discussion and make sure that it doesn't boil over into a significant problem at Atlanta or beyond. That sentence is not routine diplomatic language. That is NASCAR saying, we know these two are not done with each other. Why NASCAR is still meeting both drivers. And we are not going to let Atlanta become the place where it gets genuinely dangerous. For SVG specifically, the no penalty ruling matters enormously beyond just avoiding a fine. He